Hi, I'm Brooklyn. I'm with Block Party Quilt Co. and today I'm going to show you how to make this cute little stocking. So this looks like it was an old quilt, but don't worry, no quilts were harmed in the making of this stocking. It actually comes in a kit. So you have everything you need to make it. We've got all of the fabric, the batting as an optional add-on. Some of us do have batting scraps, so this is here just in case. And we are going to go through making this cute little stocking. You can make one or you can make a whole set and you can have it all ready for Christmas. The best part is they come together so fast. So let's get started. Let's take a look at what is included in this little cute kit. So we have batting. Batting is listed as optional because a lot of us have batting scraps laying around from other projects, and that works really great for this. But you need batting for the kit. So if you don't have batting scraps, make sure you select that you want some. We have our batting, our stocking template, our fabric for the cuff, inner lining fabric, and the outside fabric. All of these are going to be combined. We'll start here actually with the template. Now let's look at how we line this up. So you will get 2 pieces of paper that look something like this, and we will need to cut out a stocking shape. So this line here is the line that we use to line up the other piece. So cut along the top line. This one is the one that's going to have the excess paper where we stack this on top. Once you have that lined up, then we just tape it. And I like the tape to hang over the edge a little bit so that when I cut it out, the edges aren't like crazy. And then we cut out our stocking shape. You don't need to add a seam allowance on here. It's already accounted for, so you don't have to add or change the lines at all. You just cut around the shape. I like to cut just a little bit to the inside of the line. Now we have our little cute stocking shape. If you prefer to cut this off, you can. I usually just tape it on because it gives it a little bit more stability to have, thicker paper, and plus then I don't have to do an extra step. So now we have our stocking shape, and we'll take these pieces off to the side. Now for the fabric portion, let's get out our lining. Now this is a solid, so we don't have to stress too much about right sides or anything like that. I'm gonna lay it out. I have the whole piece laid out here. Even though you can only see just a little section, I am going to stack my batting over the top of my solid, my inside lining fabric. The fun thing about that is it can really just be like anything. It's always fun to have fun prints, but if you have a million miles of white in your stash or anything like that, like you can just sub in whatever fabrics you want for this inside lining. My piece of batting is giving me just a little bit of a struggle here. Once you get your batting on, take your top fabric and place that over the top of the rest. And then we're gonna just quilt this. Now, cheater prints or prints that are made to look like quilts that are already put together tend to be kind of tricky. And that's why they're good cheater prints, because they would be really hard to put together in real life. So this whole piece is just one piece, but we want it to be quilted so that it gives the effect of an actual quilt, right? So I'm gonna take my pins and pin it all over the place. And as I've said before in other videos, I am not a master quilter on my domestic machine. I'm way more comfortable on a long arm, but this project is small enough that I was like feeling brave and I'm gonna tackle it, and it was actually really fun, but I still made some mistakes and I'll show you. So I have this pinned here and I'm gonna quilt along all these lines. This piece, I found the easiest, fastest way to do it was to quilt all of the plus signs, I guess. So quilting all of these lines in the middle of the circle. And then it was easy to start on the round part and just kind of work my way around quilting that way. And it turned out to be really fun. And just for the sake of making this video fast, I'm not gonna quilt it on here. I've actually already quilted and washed this piece. So now it has this awesome like crinkle. Oh, I love this. It makes it look like an old quilt. And like I said, I am not a pro at quilting on my domestic machine. Like I've got some big folds and, not not my best work, but that's okay because, as I said before, it's just the inside of the stocking. No one's ever going to see it. And if they do see it, it's while they're also getting out presents, so they won't mind, right? But I just love how this looks like an actual quilt now that it's been washed and quilted. And my lines aren't perfect, but I did work to get them pretty close as on that line as I could. So if you're using this print or another one, the more time you spend working on the quilting, the more quilty it's actually going to look. And we've got this beautiful little situation that happens with the batting. I think that's so funny. So now that you have your piece done, let's take it and your stocking template and we're going to lay it over and trace it. Now, it does shrink in the wash, but it shouldn't have shrunk so much that you don't have extra room. You should have plenty of room to trace and cut this out stacked like this. If you're worried about the room you need or you want to fussy cut it, unfold it and then you can kind of stagger it together a little bit more. But I am going to just do it like this. So I am watching to see kind of what I want on the toe. I definitely want this piece in because I think it's so beautiful. So this is going to be on the front. Now this is also where you have to decide if you want your stocking hanging left facing or right facing, because you're going to be cutting out two pieces at once. We're determining the orientation now. So if you want this section on the front of your stocking and you're having left facing stockings, then that's the direction that you want to cut it. All right, I'm pretty happy with that placement. Do want to make sure, I love the way that these little things turned out, like where it crossed, so I'm trying to make sure I get some of that in there too, in the front of it, but I might not get a lot. And you definitely want to make sure that you are not going over the edge, because it would be very sad if you cut this out after doing all this work and you miss the edge of your stocking. So make sure that when you're pinning it, that you are through all of the layers and you're on the fabric. Now I have this marked, it's pretty secure. You can either mark this and then take it off, or I am just gonna go straight into it and cut this with my rotary cutter. Using a ruler is kind of silly because obviously this is not a straight line, but there are some pieces that I want to be somewhat straight. And this also helps me keep the fabric weighed down so that it makes it easier to cut. I'm gonna set this quilt scrap aside and maybe I'll come back to that later. I don't know, I thought about doing an ornament or something simple with that. It would be really cute. But right now we're just focusing on the stocking. Getting this rounded corner, it's gonna be prettier when it's sewn. Right now it's pretty pointy, but that's something that's easily gonna be tucked in the seam allowance. Now for the big reveal, let's take off the template. This is another reason tracing can be good, because somehow, I don't even know how, I just ate this up with my rotary cutter. So tracing alone can be good. Now this is how my stocking is gonna look when it's hanging. So we have a good glimpse. And now what we have to do is sew it together. So now we're gonna take these pieces and place them right sides together. Oh my gosh, I just love that so much. That is like the cutest little Christmassy quilt, and it has the effect that you cut apart an old quilt, but you didn't have to destroy one, so we're all happy. Now I'm gonna take this and pin it with right sides together. Here's that cute little mistake I pointed out earlier on my quilting. And you may notice, I don't know if it's visible to everyone, there's a slight green tinge in this fabric, like very, very slight. I washed this and I didn't use a color catcher, and so I can see some of that. If I wash it again, most of that green would fade away. But since these are things that we're only gonna be washing probably once, unless you have little kids like I do who would find a way to get Christmas stockings dirty, I would recommend washing this with a color catcher so that you don't have any ink bleed. I recommend that with every quilt. I honestly just didn't think about it with this one because it's small and I was not planning on needing that. So now we have our stocking pinned with right sides together. I'm going to show you how we are going to prep the cuff. The piece that comes with this kit is it's a little bit bigger than a fat eighth. We're gonna cut this to make sure that the stripes are straight and that we have only 9 inches of fabric here. 9 by 17 is the dimension you need. It always makes me so happy when the stripes line up perfectly on the edge, when I'm not even like focusing on that. That's a good day. So save these 2 pieces. Let's save them and we'll come back to them in a minute. So for the cuff, we have our piece and we're folding it in half so that this is, as they say, hot dog style. And now I am going to press this cuff just so that this edge is folded nicely. Okay, now that is all folded. We'll set that up here. And I need to make a loop for hanging the stocking. So I am going to cut a piece to 2 inches by 8 inches. This is a pretty long loop, but it's way frustrating when you can't hang it on something that you want to because it's too short. And it's also cute that if you are comfortable with it, cutting this at sort of an angle is fun because then when it's all folded, you get the stripes crossing each other, kind of like a candy cane. This is just gonna be straight up stripes. So now I'm going to make bias tape. And if you've never done that, this is a really easy size to start with. So we're gonna take our piece and fold it in half to find the center. I'm just gonna do a quick little finger press where I fold it and then just with the back of my fingernail, I kind of rub it over that fold so that I can see where that center mark is. Then I'm gonna bring up the raw edge here. And again, just a light finger press because I am going to take this to the iron, but this is just gonna hold it in place. And then the same thing on the other side. So you are folding in these edges to the middle and I'm gonna press that. This is what is referred to as a single fold bias tape, as in, well, there's 2 folds here, which is why it's kind of confusing, but it is only folded once total. A double fold is when you take that and turn it down. Now it's called bias tape because when you cut it along, like I was showing, you have the option to cut it at an angle, cut it crooked, then the fabric has some stretch. And so that's really useful in making clothes and things like that. But I am not working with that right now. I'm just doing this. So I'm gonna press that and then we will have our stocking loop. So it's something that doesn't need to be stretchy. If you wanted it to have a little stretch and you cut it on that corner, then that's really fun too. This is also something that can be subbed in with ribbon or any kind of little trims. That would be really fun on this. So now I'm gonna take this to my machine and I'm gonna sew along this outside edge so that it's like one piece of kind of like a ribbon. It's kind of like a ribbon, but it's not a ribbon. And now I have this little thing that's gonna make such a pretty little loop for hanging the stocking. I am going to sew around the outside edge of my stocking. I'm using between 1/4 and 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on this. The main thing is you just want all the layers to be tucked in. You don't need a huge seam allowance, but you want to have a little bit more than 1/4 inch just to make sure you get all the layers sewn together. And so now we have this all sewn, and if you're feeling fancy, you can do a zigzag overlock or whatever kind of finishing stitch you like down here along this edge. And we're going to jump right into this next piece. So with your cuff fabric, you are going to need to line it up over the top of this stocking. And I know what you're thinking, that's the wrong side. Well, let me show you what. This is how we're gonna do it. So I have this overlaid my stocking and we're not gonna sew it on quite yet, but I wanted to see to make sure that I have this in the right spot. And I am going to pin exactly on the line where this touches. So the inside of my stocking, or I guess this piece of the stocking where it's touching this fabric here. That's what I'm getting with these pins. Then I can just slide that off, and that is the exact size of my stocking. So I am gonna put a seam just barely on the outside of these pins, and that's how our stocking cuff is gonna come together. The most important part that matches is down here on the bottom where the fold is, because you'll be able to see that. You won't be able to see the top raw edges. And we have this extra amount right here. You can trim that off right now if you're feeling confident, or leave it on for a minute. I'm actually gonna take off my base. I don't know exactly what that's called. If you know what it's called, tell me in the comments, and then next time I'll be able to say that correctly. I'm gonna wrap my cuff back over the top of this stocking. And now this is where we put in the loop. So I'm going to tuck it in here. This back corner here has a lot going on. So I'm tucking in my loop. I am gonna have my stocking facing this direction. So I am going to tuck this on the back of that fabric. And honestly, it really doesn't matter. So if you know how you're gonna be hanging your stocking, then do that now. If you don't, then don't worry about it, because it is such a minor difference. And you can do just like a standard loop, or if you're feeling fancy, again, we can do one of these little guys, and then that might have even a better hang than if it was just in a straight line. So what I did is I brought my pieces like this and I made them kiss. So then now I have like a fold up here. It's not really folded, but that's just for you to see. I'm gonna sew that together just so it stays, and then I'll tuck it in right here. I'm gonna take my little loop and I am going to push it up to be right next to all these raw edges up here. So here's my loop right here, and I have this raw edge, and then I have the raw edge of the stockings. I'm gonna bring the loop up a little higher so I can make sure that I get it in that seam. And then once I'm sure that I have this cuff the right size, I'm gonna trim off some of this extra cuff fabric. It's not a lot, but there's already a lot of bulk going on up here, and I don't wanna have more than what I need. Then once you have that, you are ready to sew around this edge. So I am just going to use between 3/8 and a 1/2 inch seam allowance just to make sure that everything is clean, and I'm going to sew this. One thing to watch for is when you get to this edge, you have this crazy little seam going on that has like 4 pieces of fabric and batting. This would be a good time to press that open, or if you did a finishing stitch, press it to one side or the other. That way you're not gonna get like some crazy bulky mess. And you can also do that to the other side too. Now I am stacking my seams here just because I want the look of the seam going down the outside of the cuff to match the seam that's going down the outside of the stocking. Maybe I'm making this too hard for myself. I'm not sure, but this is what I want it to look like. So I have those pinned, and then I am going to pin this other side. So I'm pulling that tight to make sure that the fabric is lined up even across the whole thing. I'm gonna make sure that my edge here is put where I want it, and then place a pin in that too. Now I'm just going to sew around this edge with about a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I took off this little platform guy because I like to be able to wrap my stocking on the inside of the machine. Like, it's nice to have this little thing instead of dealing with overhang. And I didn't start anywhere specific on this because I have it pinned. I know that I'm gonna have a clean spot in every point of it. When you get to this part over the loop, hit it with a couple back stitches because that's the part that's gonna get the most use. Now here is the fun part. We get to see how it looks. Make sure there's no pins in it before you stick your arm down the stocking, or you're gonna have a not happy surprise. I am so glad. I wanted to make sure that that star was gonna be visible because I love it. That's my favorite piece, I think. And then here's what's fun. I'm turning out my cuff, and would you look at that? It's a real Christmas stocking, complete with a loop and all of the cuff, and you made it. And I hope you go on and grab a kit and make your own because this was so fun. Now I am going to press around this top part But other than that, I'm not gonna add any more stitching. If you wanna personalize it, if you want a smaller cuff, the easiest way to do it at this point is just fold it and top stitch it. But I am really loving the way that that looks. I cannot wait to hang that up and then fill it with gifts this year for Christmas. I hope you enjoyed making this little stocking with me. Yours are gonna look so cute. So make sure you step over to our website and grab the kit so that you can use these beautiful fabrics. And if you're not already subscribed to our channel, make sure you hit that button so that you can see all of our future tutorials coming out.